Alright, playing 9-handed 2-3-5 no limit with a buy-in structure of 200 to 800. I'm in for 800, and in this first hand I have Jack 9 of diamonds in middle position. There's an undergun 1 limp, and I raise to 25 and pick up 3 callers from the low jack, high jack, and big blind. 4 ways to a flop of ace 10 9, all clubs, so not the best flop with just bottom pair. After big blind checks though, I decide to c-bet 35. This can sometimes just end the hand here, but if not, the hope is that I at least get to set my own price to see the turn. And that is what happens as the low jack calls and the other 2 players fold. Turn comes an offsuit 6, and this time I check. Low jack, who's a very good reg, decides to take the green light and bets 90. I fold. Next time the straddle is on, low jack calls, and I raise the 50 from the small blind with king queen red. Big blind and straddler call, and we take a flop 3 ways, which comes ace 7 6 rainbow. Although ace high board should be good for me, I feel like my opponent should have some good coverage on this board. I don't really like just giving up right away, but that's what I decide on and check. Big blind and straddler also check, and the turn comes a 10 of diamonds. I check, big blind bets 100, straddler folds, I fold, and big blind was nice enough to show ace 8 of diamonds for the goods. Shortly after, there's a hijack raise to 15, cutoff calls, and I close the action and call from the big blind with ace 6 of spades. 3 ways to a flop of 9-5-3 with a couple of spades, so a good one giving me the nut flush draw. I check, hijack bets 35, and cutoff calls. Great spot to press my equity here, as I can have some strong value hands like sets in bottom 2, and I raise to 125. Hijack quickly folds, and after a bit of tanking, cutoff jams for 262 total. I call, and we're off to a turn in river. 4th string comes a deuce of hearts, so I pick up a gutter, and 5th string rolls off, a black king. But unfortunately, it's not the one I needed, and cutoff wins with ace 9 offsuit. Next spot there's a low jack limp, and I raise to 25 from the cutoff with 5-7 of diamonds. Button, small blind, and low jack call, and we go multi-way to queen 3 deuce, all black, so a complete whiff. It checks to the button who bets 75, small blind folds, low jack jams for around 200, I fold, button calls, and they're off to a run out, which comes a 9 of clubs and the 6 of diamonds. Button wins with ace queen offsuit. I then find myself making a light defend from the big blind holding 7-10 offsuit after a hijack raise to 15 and a button call. We go 3 ways to king 4 deuce, all hearts. Action checks through, and the turn comes a 5 of spades. Given what feels like disinterest from my opponents, I decide to put my 7 of hearts to use and rep a flush. I bet 20, hijack folds, and button calls. Heads up to a river, which comes a jack of clubs, so it doesn't change a whole lot. I continue with the plan at bet 75, only to get snapped off and lose to king queen. Bad read on this one, and after going 0-5 thus far, I like to change that trend when I raise a 20 from under the gun with ace 4 of spades. Big blind defends, and the flop comes ace 5 deuce, all red giving me top pair and a gutter. Big blind leads 25, and I proceed with a call. Turn comes a queen of diamonds, putting up a second flush draw, and after big blind checks, there are too many possibilities on this board to just check back, so I fire 80. And before I can complete the bet, big blind folds. Nice to finally win a hand. I then continue the momentum and upgrade to ace king of clubs from the small blind, and after button limps, I raise to 25, and only the big blind calls. Heads up to a flop of 8-6-3 rainbow, so I've got overs and backdoor clubs. I see bet 25, and big blind calls. 4th string comes a great card, it's the ace of diamonds. Could definitely mix here, and in hindsight I would have liked to check, but I decided to fire 70. Big blind thinks it through for a bit, and folds. Not a big pot, but nice to win 2 in a row. Looking to make it 3 in a row, I raise a 20 from the button with pocket 9s. There was a hijack post in this hand, and I do get 2 callers from the small blind and hijack. We go 3 ways to jack 6 deuce rainbow, and after it checks to me, I fire 20. Both players call, and we go to a turn of a 5 of clubs completing the rainbow. Both players check, and on this dry board, it's reasonable to assume that I'm up against a jack, so I check back. And well, the river comes another jack, so now I'm feeling pretty good about my hand, and when both players check, I fire a bet of 80. After a little bit of deliberation, small blind puts in the call, and hijack folds. I turn it over, and it's good. With some positive momentum, I then pick up king 9 of clubs in middle position. Undergun 1, who seems to be a tight player, raises to 25. I decide to splash around to test that assumption, and a 3 bet to 75. Folds back to undergun 1, and he puts in a 4 bet to 175 with 700 back. This play in this formation is probably aces, but he's laying me a very attractive price with a hand that can crack aces, so I call. Looking for a good flop? It comes 10-7-4 with a heart draw, so not a good one. Under the gun 1 fires 275. I fold, and that's what lighting $175 on fire pre-flop looks like. I then pick up clubs again, this time with 5-7 and the low jack, and I raise to 20. Small blind makes a fairly large 3-bet to 105 with 700 back. Fairly deep here, so I put in the call, and we take a flop heads up, which comes ace-queen 3, all clubs giving me a flush. Small blind checks. My hand does need some protection, and hoping that he has a Broadway holding that can continue, I fire 120. Unfortunately, he doesn't think too long, and open folds pocket kings. Not too long after, early position and late position limp, and I raise to 30 from the button with a speed limit. Only early position calls, and the flop comes king 6-3 rainbow. Early position check calls my range c-bet of 25, and the turn comes a queen of hearts. I don't have a good sense of what my opponent has, but when he checks, this is a board where I'll have all the strong hands, so I'll continue the aggression for 90. He calls once again, so a bit concerned as we take a river, which comes a 7 of clubs, completing an open and a straight draw. Not too concerned with the hand since I'm holding 2 5s. When early position checks, my hand is rarely ever good here, so that should be enough incentive to fire a third bullet, particularly since I have a good removal to the nuts. I decided to shut it down though, and check this one back. Early position wins with ace-king of diamonds. Hand immediately after, there are 3 limpers and a raise of 35 from the cutoff with 4-5 of hearts. The same opponent from the previous hand now executes the limp re-raise to 150 with around 800 back. Folds to me, and I make the call. Flop comes ace-9 deuce rainbow, and my opponent checks. Happy to take a free card with the gutter, I check back. Turn comes the 8 of hearts, and now my opponent bets 100. Interesting line here, he can certainly have checked the flop with pocket aces or ace-king for deception, but it's also possible that the ace is a scare card for a hand like pocket kings or pocket queens. With just a naked gutter, I can't profitably call, and while folding is reasonable, I think it sets a weakness here, so I raise to 280 as I can incredibly represent value hands like ace-x, pocket 9s, pocket 8s, and 8-9 suited. He goes into the tank for a bit, so that's a good sign, and after a bit of deliberation, he decides to let it go. Nice to get this one through. I then do upgrade to an ace-x hand from the big blind, and after a bit of position raises to 25 and cutoff calls, it's probably better to squeeze, but I decided to just call instead. We go 3 ways to a flop of queen 10-3 rainbow, giving me a gutter to the nuts, and surprisingly action checks through. Turn comes a jack of diamonds, putting up a backdoor flush draw, and given the action, my hand rates to be the best hand, unless middle position binked ace-king. I put out a bet of 40 to gain some clarity on this hand, and I get clear info as both players fold. I then pick up pocket 5s again, this time from the big blind. Cutoff raises to 20, button and small blind call, and closing the action, I call as well. We go 4 ways to a nice looking flop of 6-5-4, giving me middle set on a draw heavy board. Action checks through, and 4-3 comes a jack of diamonds, putting up another flush draw. Checks and flow again, and this time the initial raiser in the cutoff decides to fire 40. Button and small blind fold, and with such a dynamic board, it's a pretty mandatory check raise, and I make a 180. Cutoff thinks a bit, and puts in the call. We go to a river of a 7 of hearts, so it's not the best card for a couple of reasons. One, my opponent could have the best hand now with an 8 and occasionally pocket 7s, and 2, if he has a jack, it's going to be hard to get a ton of value given this run out. That said, flushes do brick out, so getting a hero call is possible, and I fire 245. He doesn't act immediately, so that's a good sign, and after weighing his options, he decides to put in the call. I turn it over, and it's good. I then get a sign that a double up is in order as I go from pocket 5s to pocket 10s. There are 2 limps, hijack raises to 20, and I 3-bet to 70 from the cutoff. Early position limper folds, middle position limper calls, as does the hijack. We take a flop 3 ways, which comes queen 10 deuce with a diamond draw, and giving me Steph Curry's jersey number. Middle position checks, and the initial raiser in the hijack leads for 100. Both players have pretty shallow stacks, so I just jam. Middle position folds, and hijack calls for 280 total. Expecting to have the best hand just about always, we go to a run out of a 9 of diamonds and the 8 of hearts. Pretty rough run out, but it turns out I was behind the whole way as I get set under set. Definitely don't expect to see that hand, but hey, at least I was right about a double up being in order. Closing things out, I pick up black 8s from middle position, and after undergun limps, I raise to 25 and pick up 3 callers. We go 4 ways to jack 7-4 rainbow, and after it checks to me, I fire 50 and only under the gun calls. Heads up to a turn, which comes a queen of hearts, putting up another over and a backdoor flush draw. Action checks through this time, and the river is a deuce of clubs. Under the gun decides to lead small for a bet of 45. In this situation, I almost never have the best hand, which means a fold is certainly reasonable. That said, my instincts are telling me that I can get a jack to fold. There aren't a whole lot of hands I can naturally represent, but sometimes aggression alone is enough to do the trick. I give it a try, and I raise to 210. I fade the snap call, so that's good, and after a bit of deliberation, my opponent decides to show the jack of clubs and folds. Alright, just finished the session here at Casino Matrix. Got in the game originally for 800, got stuck a bit, was down around 700 at my worst point. Ultimately had to add on a few times and was in the game for 1500 and out for 1437. So book a small loss of $63. First time playing at Casino Matrix for some time now. I've actually been doing a lot of poker at both Lucky Chances and across the street down here at Bay 101. This is my first vlog session of the year. And yeah, just to wrap up this video, I just want to talk about one thing that may be of value to you, and that's what has had the biggest impact on my overall poker as I look towards 2022 and hope to do some good things in both cash games and tournaments. But yeah, in 2018, I came off a pretty rough World Series of Poker, and this game will test you mentally from time to time, sometimes more often than other times, but that particular year, it tested me pretty hard. And I've always taken the mental game pretty seriously, but I decided to take sort of another step above to work on the mental game. And that's when I came across Elliot Rowe. He's a pretty renowned poker mindset coach. He offered a program that I went through, and that really kind of turned the corner for me since that time. And yeah, there's not a paid sponsorship, but I'm just mentioning this because sort of in recent weeks when I've been playing, I've been seeing some people kind of have a really tough time with the game. And I just think it's important to mention that, you know, if you're not playing for profit, that's fine. You know, just remember it's a game for entertainment. But if you are someone that is trying to make money playing this game, then I think it's broken down into two essential components, and that's the strategic side and the mental side. Obviously, I think you need to have both to be successful, but some might argue that the mental side is more important. I'd be one of those people kind of that would follow that in. And so, yeah, just hoping this will help some of you out there to remember to play this game for fun if it's just for entertainment. But if you are trying to make money, just to make sure to take care of your overall mental health, because that's really what's going to be important to allow you to have some long-term success in the game. So that's going to wrap it up for this video. I appreciate you guys liking, commenting, and subscribing. See you in the next video.